Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, and we're going to talk about Adventurer's Will to Fight. Alright, so recently there's the American news cycle has been dominated by what's happening in Afghanistan, and President Biden has had a lot to say on what's happening in Afghanistan. So let's talk about what President Biden said about what's happening in Afghanistan, what has recently happened there. And I want to focus on what he said about the will to fight. All right, so basically, I think about a month or two ago, someone said, hey, it really looks like, you've decided that. So Afghanistan, this is my understanding. Please correct me if any of this is wrong, because Afghanistan is an incredibly complicated subject. My understanding is that America has been in Afghanistan for close to 20 years, and we have been supporting the Afghan forces and trying to make it so that the Afghan forces can defend their right to lead that country. And the Taliban has been saying, hey, we want to lead the country, and America has been opposed to the Taliban leading Afghanistan, right? Well, basically, earlier this year in 2021, President Biden was like, hey, we out. Like, we're done. We're not fighting this 20-year war anymore, and America is moving out. Right. Well, immediately, some reporters were like, hey, if we move out, if we take all the American forces out and are no longer aiding the Afghan forces the way we did before, isn't that going to mean that the Taliban is going to, rule Afghanistan? And he's like, no. And so President Biden clarified this situation. He said, no, absolutely not. Listen, the Afghan forces are 300,000 soldiers, and they are equipped with the best equipment you can get in the world, which is U.S. equipment. Right? Like he said a little different than that as far as the equipment, but he was like, and they got the best equipment, right? And he kind of didn't say because we gave it to him, right? Like, because U.S. arms are like the best arms in the world, right? So he's like, hey, they got 300,000 people, and they got the best equipment in the world, right? He said the Taliban has 75,000 soldiers, and they have hodgepodge equipment, right? And so I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds like we're going to be fine, right? But then President Biden came on, and he accepted the facts that were on the ground, and he's like, oh, yeah, we did not understand what was happening, and things happened really fast, and it's the numbers didn't matter, and the equipment didn't matter, right? And so then I was shocked. And of course, reporters immediately were like, hey, why'd we lose, right? Because you said we had the numbers and we had the equipment. What happened? I could not believe Joe Biden said this. And I think this is a considerable mistake for him to say this. But he said that the Afghan forces did not have the will to fight. And I was like, what? Like, whoa, dude, that's your allies, man. That's not cool. Like, why on earth would you say that about your allies? That's not cool. Right? So I think it was very, very disrespectful for Joe Biden to say that the Afghan forces did not have the will to fight. And I feel like maybe he wasn't accepting his role in the situation, right? But it really made me think a lot about the will to fight, right? Because in Dungeons & Dragons, we think about fighting a lot, right? Like, we think about, now, of course, for us, fighting is intellectual, right? No dungeon master, no dungeon player ever takes combat into the real world. We keep combat as an intellectual activity, and we deal with combat intellectually, right? But we have the same concerns as a general, as a commander, as a soldier, right? A grunt in the, we need to understand combat at the same level, right? And we try to. We put a lot of thought into combat, right? But one of the things I was thinking is, do we really think in Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition about the will to fight, right? Because President Biden was like, you need numbers, you need equipment, and you need the will to fight, right? Now, I'm not saying if he was right or wrong about the Afghan forces not having the will to fight. I will say it. I think he was wrong. I think the Afghan forces absolutely had the will to fight, right? But the thing I think is really interesting about this whole situation is it really makes me wonder, what does the will to fight mean in Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition? And one of the things is, when we see something in IRL, we, unlike normal human beings, because we, dungeon masters and dungeon players, are not normal human beings. We are beyond human, right? We are a part of the intellectual evolution of humanity. Like, we are the next phase. We're not just regular humans, right? So a regular human would be like, oh, I wonder what that means in Afghanistan, right? But you and I can think about, what does it mean to have the will to fight, right? And so let's think about it, right? So our adventures, right, and our non-player characters, what does it mean? Let's talk just about adventures. Let's talk on the dungeon player side. We all run adventures, right? Every Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition character is an adventurer. What does that mean, right? Well, when we think about it from the perspective of the will to fight, I think an adventurer is specifically someone who always has the will to fight for good, right? Dungeons & Dragons does out raw rules as written does not allow a player character to sign up for evil day one. They don't, right? You need special permissions, and rules as written, played out of the box. You have to fight for good, right? And an adventurer is specifically a being, an entity, right? A player character is someone who has the will to fight against evil. Someone who has the will to fight against evil. They say, I am lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, lawful neutral, neutral, chaotic neutral, and I will fight every single creature in the lawful evil, in the neutral evil, and in the chaotic evil spectrum. Every Dungeons and Dragons non-player character, every monster that is within the bracket, okay, of lawful evil, neutral evil, and chaotic evil, I will raise my blade. I will cast my spell. I will shapeshift into another creature, and I will do battle. I will fight, right? I have the will to fight. And what's really amazing, right, is I don't think Biden was right. I do think the Afghan forces had the will to fight. But one thing, when you start thinking about the will to fight, it absolutely is more important than the numbers, and frankly, it's more important than the equipment, right? You can get equipment anywhere, right? And frankly, adventurers almost never have the numbers. They constantly are fighting outnumbered, right? But an adventurer is someone who never, ever lacks the will to fight, right? And just thinking about, Joe Biden's breakdown, our President Joe Biden's breakdown of this situation, when we think about the will to fight, we understand that adventurers are people who always have the willingness to fight evil. And that's me. That's me in the game, and that's me out of the game. I always have the willingness to fight evil, right? Now, I will never do that physically as long as I am blessed and there's an armed forces and a police officer, police force there to help me to do the physical fight, right? But as a person, I think we need to understand what it means in the game and what it means beyond the game, right? And the reality is, I think adventurers are people who always have the willingness to fight evil. I'm always going to have that in the game, and I'm always going to have that beyond the game. I hope you do too. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think an adventurer is. Having heard Joe Biden speak, I think it's very clear. An adventurer is someone who always has the willingness to fight evil and is never willing to back down. What's your definition? What do you think is the definition for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adventure, right? And would you apply that in your IRL, or should that just remain in the game? Love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.